Why spiritually awake people are quietly disappearing from society. Carl Jung philosophy. The silence you can't ignore. Have you noticed, my friend, in this loud, restless, hyperactive world, something mysterious is happening? While everyone is shouting to be heard, while every voice is fighting for attention, the quiet ones, the deep ones, the souls who once felt like guiding lighthouses in the storm, are slowly disappearing. But here's the strange part. They don't make an announcement. They don't slam the door with anger. They don't write long, dramatic goodbyes on social media. No, they simply fade away. Like the soft morning mist when the first rays of the sun rise. They vanish not with noise, but with a silence so powerful, so haunting, that you feel their absence more than you ever noticed their presence. And maybe, just maybe, if you're honest, you've felt it in yourself too. That hidden urge to just step away. That whisper in your heart that says, I don't belong here. Not in this circus of arguments, not in this marketplace of fake smiles, not in this endless chaos of opinions and masks. Carl Jung once wrote, "In the midst of noise, the soul finds truth only in silence. This is the truth most people cannot handle. The spiritually awake, the ones who see through illusions, the ones who feel deeper than the rest, they are not running away. They are simply choosing to disappear into a silence that heals. And today we will go deep into the 6 hidden reasons why spiritually awake people are quietly disappearing from society, through the timeless lens of Carl Jung's philosophy. So sit back, open your heart and prepare, because what you are about to hear may explain not only them, but you. Chapter 1. Truth gets buried in noise. Have you noticed how today's world has become louder than ever? Everyone is talking, shouting, posting, debating, but almost no one is listening. It feels like standing in a marketplace where every stall is screaming, I am right, and yet no one stops to truly understand. We scroll endlessly, drowning in headlines, arguments, and half-truths. The more noise, the less clarity. The more voices, the less wisdom. This is the tragedy of our age. The truth is still here, but buried under layers of endless noise. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Look at society today. Endless debates, cancel culture, viral controversies. Everyone is desperate to prove something. But here's the irony. The louder the noise, the emptier the message. Truth doesn't fight to be noticed. It doesn't compete in the circus of opinions. The spiritually awake understand this, and that's why they withdraw. They realize, the more you argue with the blind, the more you lose your own sight. Think about it. How many times have you seen truth silenced because the crowd preferred entertainment over wisdom? A profound message gets ignored while shallow gossip spreads like wildfire. Jung warned us that truth is not a weapon to win arguments. It is a mirror that reveals reality. But in today's world, people avoid mirrors. They'd rather argue than reflect. The awakened soul sees this game and quietly steps away. They know that shouting in a storm only makes you another voice in the chaos. Awakened souls stop playing that game. They don't waste energy trying to convince those who have already decided not to see. Why? Because they understand that truth doesn't need a courtroom. It doesn't need a million likes. It doesn't even need your defense. Truth simply is, and no matter how many lies are stacked on top of it, one day silence will strip them away. That is why the awakened choose silence, not because they are weak, but because they have outgrown the noise. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine a wise man standing in a crowd. The crowd shouts, "The sky is green." The wise man looks up, sees the blue sky and smiles. Does he waste his breath arguing with 1,000 voices? No, because the truth of the sky doesn't change just because the crowd denies it. This is how spiritually awake people live. They embody truth instead of debating it. They don't need to fight because their life itself becomes proof. Here's the paradox. The quieter they become, the louder their presence feels. Their silence disturbs those addicted to noise. Why? Because silence exposes what words are trying to hide. Carl Jung understood that truth is not external approval. It's inner alignment. When your life reflects truth, people can sense it without you saying a word. This is why awakened souls often feel like lighthouses. They shine, not by shouting, but simply by being. And yet most people can't handle that light. They are so used to chasing noise that silence feels uncomfortable, even threatening. They mistake calmness for weakness, when in reality it is the highest form of strength. The spiritually awake choose to embody truth rather than argue about it. They stop proving, they stop debating, they stop justifying. Because truth doesn't beg to be accepted. Truth only requires one thing: to be lived. So when you see these quiet souls disappearing from the crowd, understand this: they are not running away. They are rising above. They are no longer trapped in the endless cycle of who's right, who's wrong. They have chosen a different path, a path where truth doesn't need a microphone, only a mirror. And maybe, just maybe, if you've ever felt exhausted by the noise, it's because your soul too is calling you toward that silence, toward a life where you don't shout truth, you become it. Chapter 2. The energy of the world is chaotic. Carl Jung didn't see humans as just flesh and bone. He saw us as psyches, living fields of energy, constantly exchanging vibrations with the world around us. And if you've ever felt drained after being in a loud place or heavy after scrolling through toxic news, you know this is true. Spiritually awake souls feel this 10 times stronger. They don't just see chaos, they absorb it. Imagine walking into a crowded room. Everyone is smiling, laughing, chatting. But under the surface, tension, jealousy, insecurity, most people ignore it. But the awakened soul, they feel it immediately. The air grows heavy. The silence between words feels louder than the words themselves. Jung believed this sensitivity is not weakness. It is heightened awareness. They can feel storms before they arrive. In today's world, chaos is everywhere. Endless scrolling, constant notifications, arguments disguised as news, crowds chasing distractions. To the ordinary mind, it's just life. But to the awakened psyche, it's an assault. Their nervous system registers the overload, their soul feels suffocated, and their energy begins to drain. That is why they pull back, not to escape, but to survive. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But how can you become yourself when the world never stops shouting who you should be? Spiritually awake, people understand this trap. That's why they seek silence. Because silence is not absence, it is nourishment. Every step back they take is actually a step inward, a journey back to their true energy. Think about it. When you are surrounded by screens, ads, and endless chatter, how do you feel? Drained, restless, empty. But when you walk into nature, or sit alone in a quiet room, suddenly your chest feels lighter. Your thoughts slow down. Your soul breathes again. This is why awakened souls disappear. They are not antisocial. They are energy guardians, fiercely protecting their most sacred treasure. Inner calm. Crowds call it weakness. Society labels it introversion. But Jung would call it wisdom. He knew that your inner calm is the foundation of your sanity. Without it, you are just another body tossed around by the chaos of the collective. Spiritually awake people are not afraid of the world. They are simply unwilling to sacrifice their calm at the altar of noise. And here's the paradox. The calmer they become, the more powerful they are. Chaos cannot touch someone rooted in silence. No argument can shake them. No distraction can seduce them. Their calm becomes armor. Their silence becomes strength. This is why their presence feels magnetic. People don't understand it, but they feel it. The rare, unshakable peace of someone who has mastered their energy. So when you see these souls stepping back from society, don't mistake it for fear. It is not fear, it is not weakness, it is protection. Protection of their mind, their spirit, their soul. They are not abandoning the world. They are preserving the very thing the world has forgotten, stillness. And maybe, if you've ever felt exhausted by chaos, it's your soul whispering the same message. Step back, protect your calm, and reclaim your energy. Chapter 3. Refusing to wear the mask. Carl Jung introduced a concept that still shakes people to their core. The persona. It's the mask we wear, so the world will accept us. From childhood, we're trained to put it on. Be polite, be positive, smile even when it hurts. As adults, the mask evolves. LinkedIn profiles that scream success, Instagram captions that hide loneliness, fake spirituality that's performed for applause. But here's the painful truth. Every time we wear the mask, a small piece of our soul suffocates. The awakened ones feel this suffocation so strongly, they can't bear it anymore. The persona has a purpose. It helps us function in society. But when the mask becomes the identity, it becomes poison. Smile when you're sad. Pretend you're winning. Fake peace, fake faith, fake joy. That's the cultural script. We're told, fake it till you make it, but no one warns us that faking it slowly kills you. At first, the mask feels harmless. Then one day, it fuses to your skin. That's when anxiety creeps in, sleepless nights begin, and the soul starts screaming, "This isn't me." Jung warned us, the persona is useful, but it is not the self. When you confuse the two, your authentic being rots in the shadows. Spiritually awake people hit a breaking point. They realize applause isn't nourishment, it's addiction. Validation isn't love, it's performance. And the cost of constantly pretending is nothing less than your soul. Once they see this, they cannot go back. They cannot wear a smile that isn't theirs, cannot keep friendships that feel hollow, cannot keep performing in a theater they no longer believe in. So they stop. They walk away from the stage. They stop curating every moment to look perfect. They stop playing the role of happy, successful spiritual when inside they feel drained. To society, it looks like disappearance. To them, it is liberation. Because invisibility is not failure, it's sanctuary. For the first time, they can breathe, they can feel, they can exist without editing themselves for someone else's comfort. Think of it like this. A mask may impress the crowd, but it suffocates the one who wears it. You cannot breathe deeply when your face is covered in plastic. You cannot live fully while hiding your soul. Awakened souls understand this truth at the deepest level. They would rather risk rejection than betray authenticity. They would rather walk alone, unseen, unloved, than be adored for a lie. That is not weakness. That is courage. Of course, society doesn't like this. Society thrives on masks because masks keep the game alive. When one person removes theirs, everyone else feels exposed. Suddenly, the performance looks absurd. The theater starts crumbling. That's why awakened souls are often mocked, labeled arrogant, or told they're different. But they don't care, because they know freedom without applause is better than applause built on falsehood. Here's the paradox. When they drop the mask, they actually shine brighter. Their rawness, their unfiltered truth, their honesty, it's magnetic. Even if people resist it, they can't forget it, because authenticity is rare. In a world of performers, the real one stands out. You feel their presence differently. It's quieter but heavier, softer but stronger. Their silence speaks louder than 10,000 performances. So when these souls disappear, understand this. They are not vanishing from life. They are vanishing from the performance. They no longer want to be actors in society's exhausting play. They choose to leave the stage and return to themselves. They trade spotlight for stillness, applause for alignment, and maybe if you felt exhausted by pretending, your soul is whispering the same message: to drop the mask, to breathe again, to live raw, unfiltered, and true. Chapter 4. Tired of giving without receiving. For years, spiritually awake, people carried the weight of others. They were the healers, the listeners, the strong shoulders everyone leaned on. They were the ones who picked up the phone at 2 a.m., who stayed up comforting a broken friend, who gave advice, time, money, energy, without ever keeping score. They poured and poured until their own cup ran dry. But here's the truth Jung reminds us of. The shoe that fits one person pinches another. What feels natural to them, giving, often becomes expectation for others. And slowly, that sacred gift turns into silent exhaustion. Think about it. How many times have they been there for people who never once showed up for them? How many times did they carry someone else's storm, only to walk home alone through their own? Jung believed the psyche cannot endlessly give without replenishment. Energy is not infinite. Yet awakened souls with their deep empathy push beyond their own limits. They absorb pain, transmute it into love, and offer it freely. Until one day they wake up and realize, I have been pouring into everyone else's cup. while mine has been left empty. This realization doesn't come with anger first. It comes with grief. Grief that the love they gave wasn't always returned. Grief that people mistook their compassion for convenience. Grief that being strong became their prison. The healer becomes invisible because people only see the help, not the human behind it. And the more they give without receiving, the heavier the mask of strength becomes. It's not weakness, it's depletion. Even a lighthouse can burn out if its fire is never refueled. Carl Jung taught that energy is sacred, not endless. Spiritually awake people eventually understand this. They begin to ask, why am I the only one carrying everyone? Why is my pain invisible? And in that moment, a shift begins. They realize that constantly healing others while ignoring themselves isn't selflessness, it's self-destruction. The soul whispers, even the healer needs healing. Even the giver deserves to receive. That whisper grows louder until it becomes a call they can no longer ignore. So they retreat. Not in bitterness, not in revenge, but in wisdom. They learn to say no, they learn to protect their energy like treasure. They stop giving endlessly to those who never pour back. This withdrawal confuses people, sometimes even angers them, because society grows addicted to their strength. But silence becomes their new boundary. Disappearing becomes their medicine. They finally understand. I cannot heal the world if I keep bleeding myself dry. This retreat doesn't mean they stop loving. No, it means they love differently. They become selective, intentional. They pour only where there is reciprocity. They stop seeking appreciation from the ungrateful. They learn that giving is powerful only when it flows both ways. A river that only empties will one day run dry, but a river that receives rain becomes eternal. Awakened souls begin to treat their love like sacred water, never wasted, never forced. Though of course society misunderstands them. People call them selfish for finally saying no. Friends accuse them of changing. But the truth is, they are not changing. They are returning to themselves. Jung would say they are individuating, claiming the right to exist for their own soul, not just for others. Their disappearance is not abandonment, it is survival. Because without boundaries, empathy becomes a curse, and only in retreat can they refill their own cup. So when you see these souls withdraw, don't mistake it for coldness, it is wisdom. They are not shutting the world out, and they are learning to keep their energy sacred. They gave for years without receiving. Now they are choosing balance. They disappear, not because they are weak, but because they finally know their worth. And maybe, if you feel drained, if you've been the healer, the giver, the strong one for too long, your soul is whispering the same truth. Step back, refill your cup, and remember, even the healer deserves to be healed. Chapter 5. Healing happens in silence. Carl Jung often reminded us of the shadow, the hidden self, the parts of us we deny, repress, or fear. It holds our shame, our wounds, our anger, our suppressed desires. Facing the shadow is terrifying because it means sitting with everything we've been running from. But Jung was clear. Wholeness cannot be achieved by ignoring it. Transformation begins the moment you stop performing strength for the world and start facing your weakness in the dark. And that is why the awakened disappear, not to escape life, but to finally meet themselves. True healing is not glamorous. It is not done in front of cameras, crowds, or applause. It is quiet, raw, and messy. Healing happens when you put down the mask and sit with your tears in the dead of night. Healing happens when you admit to yourself the truth you've been avoiding for years. Healing happens in the silence between you and God, or between you and the deepest corner of your own soul. That silence is not empty. It is sacred. It is where the wounds begin to whisper their lessons. The world tells us transformation must look like a show. Post your progress, share your story, announce your healing journey. But Jung would argue that real transformation never happens on stage, because when you are performing, you are still wearing the persona. You are still seeking validation. Real healing, however, requires vulnerability too deep for an audience. It happens in prayer, in meditation, in journaling, in silent conversations where no one is clapping for you. Because the soul does not need applause, it needs truth. This is why awakened souls retreat. They don't announce it, they don't market their healing. They vanish into silence because healing is not entertainment. They know that to truly meet the shadow, they must be alone. They must peel back the illusions, strip off the masks, and sit with themselves, unfiltered, uncurated. In that silence, pain erupts. Old memories resurface. Grief knocks at the door. But slowly, what once felt unbearable begins to transform. The shadow, when faced, becomes the bridge to light. Think of a seed underground. No one sees it. No one applauds it. In fact, from the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. But in that darkness, something sacred is unfolding. Roots are being formed, strength is being built, life is preparing to break through the soil. This is what healing in silence looks like. You may look invisible to the world, but deep inside, your soul is taking root in truth. One day, that quiet growth will break the surface, not to perform, but to bloom. Society misunderstands this silence. They call it isolation, laziness, weakness. But Jung would call it individuation, the process of becoming whole. Silence is not running away. Silence is returning home. The awakened know this. Noise distracts, applause deceives, but silence reveals. In silence, you discover what you truly believe, what you truly need, and who you truly are. And once you've tasted that kind of clarity, no crowd, no spotlight, no fake connection feels worth losing it again. Here's the paradox. The ones who disappear to heal often come back stronger, wiser, and more radiant than ever. Because silence refuels them. Their tears become wisdom. Their prayers become strength. Their solitude becomes transformation. And when they step back into the world, they carry a depth that cannot be faked. People feel it in their presence, in their words, in their silence. Healing has turned them from fragile performers into unshakable souls. So when these spiritually awake souls disappear, don't assume they are lost. They are not lost. They are healing. They are in the sacred process of becoming whole. They know now that true healing doesn't happen on stage. It doesn't happen in applause. It doesn't happen for likes or validation. It happens in silence, in prayer, in tears no one sees. And maybe, if you feel broken, restless, or tired of performing, your soul is calling you to do the same. Step into silence, face your shadow, and let healing begin where no one is watching. Chapter 6. Longing for a different world. Deep inside awakened souls, there lives a strange ache, the memory of something purer, a simpler world, a slower rhythm, a place where truth mattered more than speed, where people cared more than they competed, where silence wasn't awkward but sacred. This isn't nostalgia for childhood or some fantasy escape. Jung believed it is something far deeper, the pull of the collective unconscious, a memory imprinted in every soul, of harmony, connection, and authenticity. The awakened ones feel it like homesickness for a place they've never seen. Look at modern life. It is fast, restless, and noisy. We measure worth in numbers, followers, likes, dollars, deadlines. Society tells you to run faster, produce more, show off constantly. But the awakened soul looks at this and feels like a stranger in their own time. They look at the smiles, the competition, the artificial happiness, and it feels hollow. Their heart whispers, "This isn't how it was meant to be." That whisper becomes louder until it feels like a song playing from another world, calling them home. Carl Jung believed this longing isn't weakness or fantasy. It's the soul remembering. He wrote about how the collective unconscious carries ancient patterns, truths humanity once lived by, but has now buried under noise. The awakened ones sense it. They can feel the falseness of the rat race. They can sense the emptiness in endless consumption. They crave something slower, truer, deeper. They are not escapists. They are visionaries, haunted by a world that once was, and could still be. This is why they often feel out of place. Surrounded by people who are obsessed with masks, they feel like aliens. At the party, their mind drifts elsewhere. At the office, they wonder, is this really life? While everyone else runs, they dream of stopping. While others compete, they dream of connecting. While the world screams for speed, they long for stillness. and that longing makes them withdraw, not because they hate the world, but because they are searching for one that feels like home. Think about it like this. Imagine a bird born in a cage. It learns to sing the songs of captivity. It learns to live by the rules of the cage. But deep in its DNA is a memory of the sky, vast, free, endless. One day, the bird hears the call of the wind, and suddenly the cage feels unbearable. That's the awakened soul. Society is the cage, the longing is the wind, and disappearing is not running away. It's the soul trying to find its wings again. This longing can't be silenced with material things. You can buy more, chase more, post more, but the emptiness remains. Why? Because the longing isn't for stuff. It's for depth. It's for truth. It's for a life where love is real, where conversations matter, where silence heals, where time doesn't slip away in a blur of noise. Jung believed that such longing is evidence of the self trying to guide us back to alignment, back to authenticity, back to the eternal. Of course, society misunderstands them. People call them dreamers, unrealistic, too sensitive. Grow up, they're told. This is just how life is. But the awakened refuse to settle for a life that starves their soul. They would rather be misunderstood than betray the memory of what they know is possible. And so they retreat, into forests, into books, into meditation, into art, into silence. Not because they are weak, but because they are homesick for a world their soul remembers. So when they disappear, don't mistake it for rejection of life. It is longing. They are stepping back to search, not for fantasy, but for truth. They are following the call of the collective unconscious, the whisper of eternity that says, "You were not made for this chaos. You were made for something higher." And maybe if you've ever felt like a stranger in this noisy world, if you've ever longed for a life more pure, that same memory lives in you too. The soul never forgets its true home. It only waits for us to find it again. Chapter 7. When silence becomes their power. By now you've noticed something strange about spiritually awake people. The quieter they become, the more powerful their presence feels. Carl Jung understood this paradox well. He said the soul doesn't reveal itself in noise, but in silence. And that silence is not weakness, it is strength. Awakened souls disappear from society's stage not to give up, but to reclaim the one thing chaos can't touch, their inner stillness. When they stop talking, when they stop performing, when they stop justifying, that's when their true power begins to rise. Think about the world today. Everyone is shouting to be heard. Everyone is posting, debating, screaming their truth into the void. But noise doesn't equal wisdom. Noise only drowns out the truth. The awakened soul knows this. They don't waste energy competing with the chaos. They don't waste their breath on arguments designed to go nowhere. Instead, they pull back. Their silence becomes a statement louder than any debate. You cannot touch me. That silence itself becomes their shield. Silence unnerves people. When someone doesn't react, when someone doesn't play along, the crowd becomes uncomfortable. Why? Because silence exposes truth. It forces people to confront their own noise. Jung believed that the unconscious communicates through silence, dreams, symbols, whispers. Awakened souls understand this. They know that stillness reveals more than arguments ever could. Their quiet becomes like a mirror, reflecting back the emptiness of society's endless chatter. Of course, silence is not easy. To reach this state, they had to go through years of pain, misunderstanding, and loneliness. They had to learn that not every insult deserves a reply, not every invitation deserves a yes, not every opinion deserves their energy. Slowly, silence became their teacher. It taught them patience, it taught them boundaries, it taught them that true transformation happens when you no longer need to prove yourself to anyone. And once they learned this lesson, they disappeared from the crowd. Imagine this. A warrior walks into battle. Everyone expects him to swing his sword. Instead, he lays it down and simply stands, calm, unmoved. That quiet confidence terrifies his enemies more than any weapon could. This is the awakened soul. Their silence says, "Your noise has no power here." They don't have to fight, they don't have to scream. Their stillness itself is victory. Their disappearance is not defeat, it is mastery. But silence is not just defense, it is creation. In the quiet, they hear themselves again. They reconnect with God, with nature, with their own soul. They heal wounds that noise kept hidden. They write, they paint, they meditate, they pray, not for show, but for survival. Every moment in silence is a seed planted, and one day those seeds bloom into wisdom, strength, and depth that no chaotic world could ever give them. This is why, when they return, their presence feels different, heavier, calmer, magnetic. Society misunderstands them. People think they are cold, arrogant, or distant, but in truth they are simply living at a different frequency. They are no longer tuned into the static of endless arguments, gossip, and distraction. They are tuned into silence, the language of the soul. And once you hear that language, the world's noise feels unbearable. Jung would say this is individuation at its peak, when you stop being defined by the crowd and start being defined by your soul. So when awakened souls disappear into silence, don't think they are lost. They are not lost at all. They have found something most people spend their whole lives missing: the power of stillness. They retreat, not out of fear, but out of strength. Their silence is not emptiness. It is presence. And maybe if you've been exhausted by the noise, your soul is calling you to the same place. Because silence is not just absence of sound. Silence is the place where your true self finally speaks. Chapter 8. The Courage to Walk Away. There comes a point in every awakened soul's journey when they realize staying in this noisy, shallow performance costs too much. Carl Jung often said that individuation, becoming your true self, requires courage. And the greatest courage is not fighting harder. It's walking away. They disappear not out of defeat, but out of strength. Because only the brave can say, "This is not for me anymore. I choose silence over noise, depth over surface, authenticity over performance." Society tells you never to quit. Keep pushing, keep proving, keep grinding. But the awakened see through this illusion. They realize what the world calls success often feels like slow death to the soul. Endless hustle, fake smiles, shallow victories. It's a trap. Walking away from it is not weakness. It is rebellion. It is saying, "My soul is not for sale." Jung believed true freedom begins when you no longer measure your life by society's standards, but by your own alignment with truth. Walking away terrifies most people. They fear rejection, loneliness, obscurity, but the awakened embrace it, because they have learned the deeper truth. Loneliness in authenticity is better than crowds in falsehood. Disappearing gives them back their power. Every step away from chaos is a step closer to themselves. It is in that solitude that they finally hear the whispers of their soul, whispers drowned out for years by the applause of others. Think about it. A candle burns out when it's placed in strong winds, but in a quiet room protected from the storm, the flame grows steady and bright. Awakened souls disappear for the same reason. They know their light cannot survive in the endless winds of noise, competition, and fakery. So they retreat, not to hide, but to protect the flame of their essence. And in protecting it, they prepare it to burn brighter than ever before. Jung often spoke of sacrifice. To find yourself, you must let go of the masks that once gave you comfort. Walking away is that sacrifice. They let go of shallow friendships. They let go of fake admiration. They let go of the need to be understood by everyone. Because they know, clinging to what kills you is not loyalty, it's self-betrayal. Their disappearance is not running away, it is choosing life over death of the soul. Of course, people will not understand. Some will mock them, some will call them cowards, some will whisper they've lost everything. But the awakened smile because they know a secret. They haven't lost. They've gained. They've gained peace. They've gained clarity. They've gained the rarest treasure in today's world, freedom from performance. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and that privilege is worth any misunderstanding." Here's the paradox. The ones who walk away often return stronger. Not to rejoin the noise, but to shine from a place of wholeness. Their silence becomes wisdom. Their solitude becomes strength. Their disappearance becomes transformation. And when they stand before the world again, they no longer need applause. They carry something far greater, a presence that cannot be shaken, a soul that cannot be bought. So when spiritually awake people vanish, Understand this. They are not abandoning the world. They are finding themselves. They are not quitting life. They are beginning it. Their disappearance is not the end of their story, but the beginning of the truest chapter. And maybe, if you too feel tired of noise, masks, and endless pretending, it's your soul whispering the same call, to walk away, to disappear, not in fear, but in courage, so that one day you can return, not as a performer, but as your truest self. Chapter 9. The Return of the True Self. Every disappearance has a purpose. Spiritually awakened souls don't vanish just to escape. They vanish to transform. Carl Jung often spoke of individuation, the process of stripping away illusions, masks, and false identities until only the authentic self remains. That is the hidden reason behind their silence. Their retreat is not running away from the world, but running toward themselves. And when the work is done, when the silence has done its healing, something extraordinary happens. The true self begins to return. The true self doesn't return with fireworks or announcements. It comes back quietly, like dawn after a long night. These souls re-enter the world with new eyes. They no longer chase validation. They no longer beg for belonging. They no longer wear the mask. Instead, they walk with a calmness that unsettles the noisy and a clarity that pierces illusions. People look at them and can't explain why they feel different, but they can feel the depth. Silence has carved wisdom into their presence. Jung believed that wholeness comes only when the shadow is faced, and silence is where that meeting happens. In the retreat, they confronted their wounds, their fears, their unhealed traumas. They allowed the tears no one saw. They had the conversations with God no one heard. They wrestled with the darkness inside until it became their teacher. And now, they return, not as the same person, but as someone who has integrated both light and shadow. They are no longer fragmented. They are whole. Think of a sword. Before it becomes sharp, it must go through fire, hammering, and endless refining. The soul works the same way. Their silence was the fire. Their loneliness was the hammer. Their pain was the refining. And now they emerge not weaker, but sharper, not bitter, but stronger. The world sees someone who disappeared, but in reality the one who vanished is gone forever. What returns is someone new, someone forged in silence. Of course, society won't understand. People will whisper they've changed. And they're right, they have. They no longer laugh at shallow jokes. They no longer chase hollow approval. They no longer tolerate what drains them. Their boundaries are firm, their values unshakable. Jung would say this is the gift of individuation, to stand as your authentic self, even when the world demands conformity. Their disappearance was the price. Their authenticity is the reward. Here's the paradox. The return of the true self makes them more silent, not more loud. They don't need to prove who they are anymore. They don't need to explain their journey. Their presence itself becomes proof. You feel it in their gaze, in their words, in their energy. It's the calmness of someone who has faced their storms and survived. It's the quiet authority of someone who no longer fears solitude. This presence is magnetic because in a world of masks, the authentic one shines like fire. But here's the deeper truth. Many of them never fully return to society, at least not the way they were before. They live half in the world, half outside of it. They work, they speak, they love, but they carry an inner distance, a sacred detachment. They know the noise can never own them again. They have tasted silence too deeply. They have seen themselves too clearly. And so they walk among the crowd as strangers, not disconnected, but free. So when spiritually awake souls disappear, remember this. Their story doesn't end there. Their silence was not the grave, it was the womb. They were not dying, they were being reborn. And when they step back into life, they are no longer who they once were. They are stronger, clearer, freer, the truest version of themselves. And maybe, if you've ever felt the urge to disappear, it's because your soul is calling you to the same journey, to retreat, to heal, to return, not as who the world wants, but as who you truly are. Chapter 10. The Awakened Path. Every journey of disappearance has a hidden destination. Spiritually awake souls don't vanish forever. They walk a different path, one unseen by most. Carl Jung believed individuation, the journey to your true self, is not a straight road but a spiral. You leave the crowd, you descend into silence, you face your shadows, and you rise again. Not the same, but transformed. The world thinks they've lost you. In truth, you've only just begun. Disappearance is not an ending. It is the threshold to the real beginning of life. Think of the greatest transformations in history: prophets in deserts, sages in caves, philosophers in solitude. Jung would remind us, solitude is not escape, it is preparation. Spiritually awake souls vanish because they are being initiated. The silence, the loneliness, the longing, these are not punishments. They are sacred teachers. They strip you bare of illusions until all that is left is essence. And once you've touched that essence, you can never return to shallow living again. But this path is not easy. It costs everything. You lose people, you lose comfort, you lose the masks that once made life easier. Society whispers, you've gone too far, you've lost yourself. But Jung would say, it's the opposite. You haven't lost yourself. You've finally found it. This is the paradox of awakening. The more the world thinks you are disappearing, the more you are actually appearing to yourself. This is why awakened souls look different when they return. They no longer chase what others chase. They no longer fear what others fear. Their silence speaks louder than noise. Their eyes carry depth that no spotlight can fake. They walk lighter, yet their presence feels heavier. They are detached, yet more compassionate. They don't belong fully to the world anymore, because now they belong to truth. Jung believed the awakened ones carry a responsibility, not to preach, not to argue, but simply to live as living symbols of wholeness. Their life itself becomes a mirror. By embodying silence, they remind others of their own forgotten stillness. By embodying authenticity, they expose the masks others still wear. By embodying depth, they stir longing in those who've settled for shallow. Their disappearance was for them, but their return becomes medicine for others. Of course, most will not understand them. Some will call them detached, some will call them strange, some will call them dangerous. But the awakened don't seek understanding anymore. They know truth has never needed the crowd's approval. They know silence is stronger than argument. They know depth outlives distraction, and so they walk on, carrying both shadow and light, rooted in a world most people have forgotten exists. Here's the ultimate paradox. Their disappearance is never just about them. It is also about us. Because when they vanish, we feel the weight of their absence. And when they return, we feel the shock of their presence. They become proof that there is another way to live. Proof that silence can be power. Proof that solitude can heal. Proof that authenticity is possible in a world of masks. They are not simply individuals anymore. They are reminders, walking archetypes of what humanity has lost. So if you've ever felt the urge to disappear, if you've ever felt tired of noise, masks, and endless performing, maybe your soul is whispering the same invitation. Don't fear it. Don't resist it. Because disappearance is not death, it is rebirth. Healing happens in silence. Transformation happens in solitude. And when you return, you will carry something the world desperately needs, your true self. That, Jung would say, is the privilege of a lifetime, to disappear from illusion and to reappear in truth. Conclusion: the silence that speaks. We began with a mystery. Why are spiritually awake people quietly disappearing from society? And now, after this journey through Jung's wisdom, the truth is clear. They disappear because truth is buried in noise. They disappear because the world's energy is chaotic. They disappear because they refuse to wear the mask. They disappear because they are tired of giving without receiving. They disappear because healing happens in silence. They disappear because their soul longs for a different world. They disappear because silence has become their strength. They disappear because they had the courage to walk away. And they disappear because only in disappearance can the true self return. But here's the paradox, my friend. They are not truly gone. Their absence is their presence. Their silence is their voice. Their retreat is their transformation. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That is what this disappearance is all about. peeling away illusions until only the authentic self remains. So if you've ever felt tired of the noise, if you've ever longed for silence, if you've ever felt the urge to disappear from this endless circus of masks and chaos, don't ignore it. That longing is not weakness. That silence is not emptiness. It is your soul calling you home. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not to speak, not to fight, not to perform, but to step away, to retreat into the silence, and to let that silence transform you. And when you return, you won't be the same. You won't need applause. You won't need validation. You won't need masks. You will walk back into the world carrying something the world desperately needs, your true self. That is the hidden meaning of their disappearance. And maybe it is also the next step in yours. If this message spoke to you, if you felt the silence inside your own heart while listening, then don't let it stop here. Take a breath. Ask yourself, am I living for the noise, or am I living for my soul? Because maybe, just maybe, your soul has been whispering the same truth all along. Share this video with someone who feels lost in the chaos. Leave a comment with one word, awake, if you're ready to choose silence over noise, authenticity over masks. And subscribe, because this journey doesn't end here. There are more truths, more awakenings, more whispers of the soul waiting for you. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." So let's awaken, together. The world is loud. But here, in this space, we choose silence. We choose truth. We choose to become who we were always meant to be.